Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Nick, and we have Sean here with me today.
Hello.
So today for you, we have an interview with songwriter Jacob Aviner of the band Porterfield. So this is from a new series from our company, Terranaut Recordings, where we interview a bunch of songwriters and talk about process, creativity, inspiration, and all that stuff.
Hit that like.
Terranaut Recordings is a company that we both started where we do all the production, mixing, mastering, and tracking, and all that good stuff. We record our instruments, we record acoustic instruments, and all in an affordable package where you keep all the rights.
Listen to us and do stuff. Terranaut Recordings.
Brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
So if you're interested in that, check the link in the description. But now we're going to bring you the interview with Jacob. I want to apologize that we have an AC on in the background, but the room is really hot and we didn't want to gross out Jacob. But anyway, here's the interview.
We're here with Jacob Aviner, who's a songwriter in New York. Why don't you give us a short bio about yourself?
Sure. I'm Jacob. I am a musician in New York. I'm a guitar player and a singer, and I used to play bass, but Sean's here, so I feel like I shouldn't say I play bass.
No, I mean,
Sean's
dude,
like, yeah,
all
don't fucking say it.
all guitarists play bass by proxy.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
the
that's-
joke is, like, what do you call a guitar player that plays with other musicians? A bass player. Not a good joke. But yeah, so I'm here. I've lived in a few different cities. Sean and I have worked at the same coffee shop at different times. Pavement.
Shout out to Pavement.
Shout out to Pavement. Scott McCullough, if you're still there, if you're watching this.
Also Scott Johnson.
Also Scott Johnson. And yeah, I went to Berklee, which I was made fun a lot of at my grad program where I met these fools at NYU. And I have a band called Porterfield. We just put out an album, which took way too long to make, and we're not going to take so long to do the next one. That's me in a nutshell.
Who do you think would win in a fight, Jeff Buckley or Elliott Smith?
That's a tough question to answer because Elliott Smith supposedly stabbed himself and Jeff Buckley drowned in a river with boots on. So, sadly enough, I feel like Jeff Buckley would win because I feel like Elliott Smith wouldn't be able to punch a thing. I feel like Jeff has got a little more punching, but he also like is a gangly dude and seems like a sweetheart. I don't know.
I think they both got chutzpah.
They both got chutzpah for sure, yeah, but Jeff's a little more angry, at least in his music. Or, yeah, I don't know. Elliot just seems so sad all the time.
How would you say they've influenced your songwriting? Is that what you're supposed to ask in an interview?
I think so, yeah. I mean, very differently. Jeff Buckley has definitely been like a true north for me for a long time. Vocally, he's like what I go for when I'm singing my music, definitely. And his harmonic choices, I think, are really cool, like in the context of a rock song, you know. He does a lot of like kind of moving block chords, but like with detuned and open strings, you know. So like that creates cool harmonic content, and it's just like it's great to hear that in a rock context. Also, he gets a lot of stuff from like Southeast Indian classical music, which is like super hip. I don't know if you guys have heard his live at Cine thing. He has like this like 2-hour long live concert that he did kind of before he blew up for like the Columbia execs, and he sings like some what's his name, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan shit, which is like this like crazy Indian singer, and he like sings it like really well, you know.
Right.
So you can tell he like does his research in terms of that. And Elliott Smith for me is like a perfect example of like a composer who writes songs, you know. Like his melody harmony relationship is like on point every time, and like just you hear the counterpoint between the voice and the bass, and it's like incredible. The piano parts are like little etudes in and of themselves, you know.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like let that get in the way of like the emotion of the music, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah. So both great songwriters that I have like, you know, used as models either in exercises, just like I'm gonna write a song based off of like speed trials or something, or like between the bars, you know, just as like an exercise to try to get into it, or even just to transcribe some of that stuff, or like same thing, you know, doing like harmonic ear training with Grace, you know, like just like trying to like hear what he's doing without the guitar is like, it's just those are like, that's a perfect album for me, and so is EXO. So like being able to like always go back to those for inspiration is nice. But yeah, emotion and cool guitar playing stuff from Jeff Buckley / vocals, and then like compositional technique from Elliott Smith are definitely like what I get out of those guys. Yeah, and I also just tell my students to check them out if they haven't yet, because it's like mind blowing.
Cool. Yeah. So you mentioned that you went to Berklee and all that, and I know your like academic background, but like, why don't you talk a little bit about like how, because you're like a jazz musician, but you also write songs and like are a singer. So why don't you talk a little bit about like how you sort of merge the two worlds?
Sure. So I'm like a jazz musician because I really don't think I am a jazz musician. Definitely, maybe jazz adjacent. I went to Berklee for like singing, and I thought I was going to study songwriting there. And I learned that if I was going to do that, I would spend 4 years just like talking about like lyrics and shit, which I was like, why don't I just get an education in like classical literature or something?
Right.
Which is what I left to study music. So I studied something that I thought I couldn't get anywhere else, which was jazz composition, like big band writing, you know, kind of like the music of Bill Evans, you know, voice leading, horn writing, all of that kind of stuff. And for me, what that did was kind of create a really large palette of sounds and techniques to draw from in a songwriting context. So I'm going to trash the vocal department at Berklee for a moment, but I didn't get anything as a vocalist from Berklee. It was like a real shame, because I would have loved to. I had one teacher who was like a baller, and then everything else was just like, let's talk about the lyrics. It's like, come on. But the harmony department and the jazz department were great. I took a bunch of classical composition courses. You know, I'm really into like talking about Elliott Smith. I started listening to Elliott Smith when I was at Berklee. A buddy of mine kind of turned me on to him. And like hearing stuff like melody and bass relationship in context of a song really started like getting me interested in composition, and thinking about like how you can pick colored notes when you're writing a song as a singer, right? It's like you have vocal production and you have tone, and like and the obviously the words and the way you enunciate the words is one thing, but what is the note against the chord that you're singing? Like you can have like a really basic 1-6-2-5 or like 4-5-1 kind of a chord progression, and that can go really far, especially if like you start on a 9 and then you go to the major 7, and then like at some point you like kind of add like a flat 5 or a sharp 11 or something, and then that makes people go like, you know, but harmonically it's like not that complicated.
Right.
So as a singer, starting to hear that kind of stuff, which you get from like jazz standards, for sure, but also like studying, you know, like classical counterpoint, you know, and seeing how these chord progressions, which, you know, I got my ass kicked in some of those classes because I was like trying to write like major 6 chords, and they're like, this shit does not exist here, like go home. But like how you can take these like kind of traditional chord progressions, you know, not like some crazy like Tigran shit, and use the melody the way that like Bob Dylan uses lyrics, you know, like the melody works for itself, right? And if they're not codependent, but they work by themselves and they work together, then you have a really strong I think you have a really strong song or composition. That's kind of the stuff that I really picked up there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because when I hear your music, it sounds like
genre list, it's like, oh, this is Jacob and the stuff that he likes.
Mm.
Especially on the new record, which is Porterfield. This is band. Check it out.
Oh, Rome.
Yeah, the links will be down in wherever this is. I don't know.
Somewhere above my knees, maybe.
Yeah.
Or on top of my
slightly
knees.
under the knees, maybe.
In the ether. What's your greatest fear? I'll tell you mine.
In what? Okay, yeah, you go first.
Becoming so jaded and uninterested in the world that I stopped learning about things.
Oh wow, that's pretty dark.
Yeah, that's something that.
I don't see that happening for you though, because you seem to like be into learning things.
Yeah, but that's what I'm afraid of.
I guess like, I don't know if it's my greatest fear, but like contextually speaking, I don't want to ever be in a place where music doesn't become a thing that let me try to say that in English. I don't ever want to be in a place where I feel like making music, or at least making my own music, isn't emotionally fulfilling. If that ever happens, then I think like I should just fucking go to law school or something and make a goddamn ton of money, retire at 40.
Right.
You know?
Do you feel like music academia sort of deters a lot of people from that, or like causes that? Sort of in a lot of.
I feel like music
understand.
academia is kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of music academia is like a pyramid scheme almost, where the only way to like get your money back is to like invest more into it until you become like a professor, and then you're like, wait, but I'm doing this to my students, promising them a future that doesn't necessarily exist. Having said that, like, I didn't take anything seriously as a kid, you know? I was like a little fucking kid in the woods going crazy all the time. So I didn't, I wasn't like shedding as a 10-year-old or like as a 15-year-old, you know? So like going to music school showed me how serious people were, you know? And like I feel like there's like a make or break of like, do you want to do this or not? Because if you don't, then like stop, right?
Right.
And for me, that was like, I definitely want to do this, and it showed me like how good you could get essentially, and like all these different avenues that you could take. So from that standpoint, it was great. From the standpoint of like meeting people and learning, like I learned the most from my peers, both in my undergrad and my grad, for sure. Except for Ari Honig, he kicked my ass.
He kicked all of our asses.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all of the Ari Honig ass kicked school.
But in a nice way.
Yes.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you.
If you're watching this 15 minutes into this.
Oh my god, you poor guy.
You made it this far, Ari. Thank you.
Feel free to turn off at any point. No, but you know, and I don't think this is just music school, but I think in academia in general, like especially today, anything you want to learn, you can learn on YouTube or on the internet or in a library. But you don't meet the people. I think that's like the reason to go to school. Yeah, I don't know. I it's a double-edged sword. Half of me is like, don't do it. I did it. I kept doing it, and like everything I learned from my buddies or like from the music that I ended up listening to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having said that, like it's kind of a shortcut. You know, your professors, they just kind of tell you what's up. You don't have to like they'll like tell you about, like I had an undergrad teacher tell me about knee body. I would have taken so long to get hip to knee body otherwise.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So for things, I don't know. It depends on who you are. A lot of people are self-motivated. If you're not self-motivated, life is going to be difficult, you know, in whatever you choose to do.
Right.
And having that motivation for music school is great. But also, like, if you're self-motivated, then, like, what are you going for? Are you going to get connections? Are you going to, like, learn about how to use a console without doing internships? Well, you're still going to have to do internships, right? So,
Right.
like, you know, it kind of depends. It also kind of helps bypass a lot of the gatekeeping, I think. Whereas before, especially in like the jazz community, jazz musicians are their own gatekeepers. You know, it's not like the record industry where like you have to appeal to some invisible man, right? And like maybe someone will be at your show and sign you, or you have to go to Nashville and then like maybe someone will be at your show and sign you, right? Like you don't have to like do that thing. You just go to the jam sessions day after day after day. But like if you go to jazz school, like Ari Honig, Peter Bernstein, Alex Sipiagin, Alan Ferber, Adam Rogers, Wayne Krantz, like all of these guys are there and you get to know them, and it really helps kind of like accelerate that. Like you have Alex Sipiagin on your album that's coming out. Like that's gonna be great for you. Like my buddy Jan Esbra, who works for Becca Stevens, who just put out a really cool ambient record. They have Ben Wendel on one of their tracks because like he through Becca Stevens like did a shit ton of transcription work for Ben, and like he got all of these connections through like I actually don't know how we got those connections, but he was a buddy of mine in the jazz program at Berklee and has met all of these people along the way. But it's about connections. It's about connections, and music school can help you make those. School in general can help you make those. So yeah, it's a long answer.
Oh,
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
But don't go to school.
Yeah, stay away.
Yeah.
Don't go to music school. But actually, on the topic of that, because I've heard you talk about this before about like Berklee composition exercises.
Oh yeah.
So like for those exercises, how much do you think they've helped you? But do you feel also that they maybe like hurt your compositional process by like kind of limiting you and making you not enjoy the process as much?
Not at all. I am super grateful for exercises. I think that exercises, they kind of show you things that you would never accomplish without them. Like I took probably the best class I took in terms of learning how to write music was compositional style of Bob Brookmeyer that I took from a peer of Alan Ferber. Her name is Ian Serto.
Oh, cool.
And she like showed us the white note exercise, which is like an exercise where you have one octave and you can only use C to C in that octave, and it all has to be like in the key of C. And you have to write a full page of melody that is like compelling, you know? And like all of these different like things, and while I don't necessarily use any of those exercises, it showed me how to like create a box to be creative inside of.
Right.
And I like, because of that and because of like learning how to write like classical counterpoint, learning how to write like 3-part inventions, these things that like by definition are a box that you have to be creative inside of, they like free you up so much to not make some decisions about the form of what you're doing. And as soon as like you don't have to, like if someone says write a song, you're like fuck. But if someone says like write a song, but you know, like Ari was really great at this. I wrote a bunch of music through Ari's lessons, and like he had some really cool exercises that I could tell in the best way possible he was making the exercises up like on the spot, or like remembering some exercise that he used like a while ago. Like write a song where the B section is half as long as the A section. You know? Like, okay, that's like already gives me a lot of information. Or write a song in 3/4 where, you know, the second note or the first note is between the downbeat and the second beat.
Right.
You know? And then you have like a descending major sixth. Like that's like the prompt. You know, like that's oddly specific, you know? But being oddly specific, that gives you so much room to be creative around, because you don't need to make these decisions that like can paralyze you, you know? I took a songwriting course with Becca Stevens. Shout out Becca. If you're watching this also. Sorry.
Yeah, for some reason I made your way here.
If you're looking to learn more about guitar or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, chock full of really cool exercises, like how to generate lyrics out of poetry, you know, how to take like random assortments of thoughts that you've written about and organize it into a song structure, you know, things like that. And Yeah, I mean, like, stuff that I've learned from friends and peers. Like, I think exercises are great. Some of my favorite songs I've written were exercises that my friends and I have exchanged or I've, like, taken from teachers, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Sick.
Fuck the man. but exercises are great.
So it's all something common between that. It's all a practice within limitation. Basically.
Yes.
Like all those exercises are sort of give you the framework, and then like you can be as creative as you want within that framework.
Yeah, totally. And I think like that speaks to the jazz tradition in that like you have people who've been playing the same song for 40 years, and like every time they play it, they have this like framework of like 32 bars, and like it's this chord progression. Maybe it's in a different key, you know. But the harmonic framework remains more or less the same, and you keep building new ideas, and then maybe those new ideas are like, oh, cool, like some guy somewhere who heard that recording is going to transcribe that, and it's going to blow their mind open, you know?
Like literally every Ahmad Jamal arrangement that people still play.
Yeah, right?
Like that was probably just
like Poinciana.
Right, yeah.
Like listen to Song.
Right.
Yeah. Right? Like
Yeah.
like
Exactly,
that's legit.
Yeah, and to think like they probably just either did that on the spot or just like arranged it like really quickly before the show is like pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And how it's become like such a part of the vernacular of like whenever you play that tune. It's like you always play that arrangement. Or like Herbie's comp on Iris. Like how like that's become like
Yeah.
like how that's become like part of like he probably just
The
Yeah.
harmonic major thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. A flat.
like he just did that on the spot.
Sharp 5 natural 5.
Well, he plays the root and then the fifth in the bass, and then plays the flat 13 on the top.
Yeah.
So he has the perfect fifth and the sharp 5.
Yeah.
It's super killer.
Like a flat 9 on the top. Yeah.
But yeah, he
Nasty.
just improvised that, and it's like it's now part of the arrangement. Like,
Yeah.
Like Jazz at Lincoln Center, like they had that in their big band arrangement of
Yeah,
Iris.
even that record, I think Miles
Jazz
started calling
Lincoln
people
Center.
on Sunday or like Saturday, and then they were like, "Oh, the record date's Monday." So and then he told Wayne to just bring his book, and then they just kind of sight read the tunes.
Yeah.
Like so, those
Yeah.
are all like basically like 1 or 2 takes in. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so. You guys said it.
You got it.
You got it.
It's good coffee.
Thanks. It's Grumpy's Old Beans that they can't
Cafe
sell.
Grumpy. Old beans.
Mm-hmm. Malacara Red.
Old beans. Old mug. New conversations.
Wow.
That's the name of the podcast.
Fucking sick. Cool. You like my amp shelf?
I love your amp shelf, man.
I was redoing that like 2 days ago at like 3 a.m.
Wow. That's why you get up at 10 a.m. because you're fixing your shelf at 3 in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fair enough. I can't, I have nothing to say to that.
Okay, wait. Actually, that brings me on to something else, which is like, how do you like? Do you have like habits and routines, like a songwriter, musician, or just in general, like habits that make your life better in some kind of way?
Yeah, coffee. Coffee is the number one habit that makes my life doable. As a songwriter, I have had habits in the past. I don't right now. I used to like do the thing where it's like once a week I will make sure to have a song written, and I did that for a long time, and I don't do that anymore because I was either writing the same song over and over and over again, or just kind of writing stuff that I didn't like,
Right.
and I'm now at a point where it's like I don't feel like I have to prove to myself or to anyone else that I can write music just to write
Right.
music. So if it feels good, I'll write it, and at this point, like, I'm releasing music so slowly that I have more songs to put out. Yeah, I mean, like, I love, I mean, like, it sounds kind of dumb, but I love, like, practicing Bach on guitar,
Yeah.
I've been doing that since my first lesson with Adam Rogers at NYU, like, 2.5 years ago. Still suck at it. But,
Doing
like...
the Sonatas and Partitas?
Yeah, it's great. It's beautiful music, and it makes me feel like I'm connected to something,
Right.
That's not like, and yeah, I don't know, but as far as being a creative person goes, I've kind of like, especially this summer, because I'm out of town and kind of like traveling a bunch, I don't really have many things that keep me centered in terms of like musical process that I have been reading. I've been practicing when I can. I've been listening to more music, you know. I find that like I'm an album listener. I'm not really like a one song at a time or like a playlist kind of a guy. So like listening to a full album, I guess like my favorite thing that I can do as like a person, as a human being, which I guess also translates into being a musician, is like my ideal like morning routine would be wake up at like kind of early-ish so that I have more time in the day, and like have a cup of coffee, sit with a cat on my lap, and listen to a record, you know, and like start the day that way. And then if I have to do something, go do something. If not, then like go into my room and play or try to write or whatever, you know.
Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I don't really have much of a routine, to be honest. I wish I did.
Yeah.
Routines are good.
Get a routine, kids.
That sounds like a routine, though. I mean, like just like a nice primer, you know, to your day.
Yeah, it's
Starting off the day like that. And
awesome way to start the day if you have the time, you know.
Right, and then life gets in the way.
Then life gets in the way.
Do you want to keep talking about this or think of something else?
Man, I have no dog in this race. I'm just happy to hang with you guys.
Good hangs. Come hang with us.
Turn up. This hang was brought to you by Turn Up Recordings.
Well, you mentioned that you originally were studying something else. What did you say, literary?
Yeah, so I actually, before I pursued music formally, I was like studying classical literature. Yeah. Which was totally like awesome and cool, and I'm very grateful that I like read shit like all of the Divine Comedy and like the Canterbury Tales, which is like super weird and dark. Like the Odyssey and the Iliad, and like, you know, getting into that kind of like classic kind of poetry stuff. And that definitely informed a lot of what of how I think about composition in terms of lyrics now. But yeah, all of my friends were in the music program and were like way ahead of me in terms of like what they were doing, musically speaking, and I was just like, man, that seems like what I want to be doing, you know? So I decided to make the change. Yeah.
How long did you study classical literature for?
Like a year and a half. Yeah, and then I had to start over when I went to music school because they're like, we only accept one semester of your credits. And then I had to like take history and literature classes at Berklee, which is like, come on guys, this is so dumb. like what? But that's fine. Fucking Berklee. Great place. Kind of.
This video is sponsored by Berklee.
It's like anti-sponsored.
Yeah, this video was not sponsored by Berklee.
They'll pay us to take
Especially
it
now.
down. It's like de-advertisement. Oh, you lived in cities.
I've lived in
Oh,
cities.
yeah.
cities.
Yeah.
What's the...
You want to talk about? Yeah, why don't you?
Like, what's the West Coast like?
Oh,
Like,
God.
What's the Northeast or Northwest like?
Weird. It's weird over there. Very nice people. The music scene in Portland is alive and well. At least it was when I was living there. I was playing upright bass, and so I would walk around with a double bass, and I got gigs just by walking around with a double bass, like literally.
Nice.
Amazing.
I was like, yeah, I had like multiple gigs a week, you know, like paying gigs, and that was super cool. But all roads in Portland lead to Portland. That's what I learned. It's like pretty insular, and the people there are pretty insulated. It's no shade because I do really. I think very fondly of a lot of the people that I met there. But it's like an insulated community, and it's not very diverse, despite the fact that they like want to be super diverse. There's just like a bunch of white people, which like obviously, you know, this room represents that as well. But like in Brooklyn, you know, where we live, it's like a Latino and Black community here. You know, we're kind of the outliers in our community, and it's cool. I feel like I'm living in the real world a little more. So you know what I mean. Especially like wanting to play jazz or like black music. It's weird to do that with only white people or like only in the context of like here's like a bunch of folks who studied it in school but like haven't lived any of it,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas like when I moved back to the East Coast, I was living with my parents and kind of commuting between New York and Boston, and I was working in Harlem as like an academic tutor, for this after school music program. And this guy, Paul Harding, that I was working with, is this older African American dude who was just like one of the coolest guys to talk to, because he like met Miles Davis, he met like Wayne Shorter, he's like met all of these greats and like was talking about it, and he like knew, like it was weird because it was like all of these like Black and Latino kids in Harlem, and they're learning about classical music, and him and I were like trying to teach them a little bit about like jazz, which is like maybe a little more relevant,
Right.
just in general to today. And just like, dude's a poet. He wasn't even like a musician per se. Like, what does that mean? But like he didn't play music, but he like knew all of these guys and like had like hung out with them. He has this great story of like when he was a kid and like he's like chatting with Wayne Shorter, asking him a question about like Iris, and then like Wayne kind of looks past him and Paul turns around and it's Miles Davis, and Miles just says, "What the fuck do you play?" Like I'm sorry, but like I never heard, like I learned more from that dude about like what it was like than like gigging a whole bunch in Portland. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we weren't even playing music together. I was just like hanging out with this guy. I hope you're well, Paul. I hope to see you again. You're a super cool dude. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Cities have different vibes. Coffee in Portland's amazing, though. Holy shit. Definitely the coffee central of America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, Starbucks was started in Seattle.
Yep.
So I imagine that.
Stumptown Coffee's for Portland.
Yeah. So I imagine the whole second wave has a.
We can talk coffee now.
We're talking about the difference between second wave and third wave coffee.
Coffee.
Coffee in the intersections of, or
We're gonna do an
say
edit
it?
here.
yeah,
Coffee.
right. Just like, what cities have you lived in? So like you were mentioning Portland. Why don't you talk about like just the cities you lived in general and sort of, I guess, general vibes of those cities. If like a songwriter, for example, wanted to be like, oh, I want to move to another city because I live in like the middle of the U.S. and there's no songwriting
Sure.
scene.
I mean, I've only lived in Boston, New York, and Portland. Although I visited Nashville once, and that is a cool town, especially as a songwriter. That's a really, really cool place to be. Or a guitar player, because the guitar porn in Nashville is insane.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Boston, like you guys know Boston.
Yeah.
It's a cool city. It's kind of grungy in terms of like the songwriter scene. Grunge, not in terms of like Pacific Northwest genre grungy, but just like basements and house shows kind of a thing. There's not a lot of good venues in Boston to play at as like a person with a band,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not like playing things like City Winery,
Right. Which is strange because there are a lot of really great musicians there.
So there's only 2 jazz clubs in Boston.
Yeah.
Like it's so
You'd
weird.
think there would be more places
Yeah.
and more opportunities for a city filled with a lot of great musicians.
Yeah, exactly. So, Boston is a great insular, or not insular, but it's a great place to like, incubatory city, I should say, where like as a college student, or just like a young person trying to like cut their teeth, it's a good place to like learn from friends, make friends. Like I met some really cool people there in like through school and also not through school, through Pavement. I met a lot of cool people.
Mm-hmm.
Pavement. And yeah, like I learned most of what I know about music like from buddies that or
Right.
like from like going to shows. I saw some like amazing bands in Boston, and like collaborated in terms of like being on the same bill with bands that I like admired. You know, Portland's a weird place, man. There's a lot of Grateful Dead there. People love the Grateful Dead in Portland. Like as a musician, you can work in Portland. Like that's the cool thing about it. Like you can really play gigs there and like do the thing, you know. But again, like if you have greater, or I should say, if you have interests that are outside of Portland, then you need to go outside of Portland.
Right.
And New York is New York, man. Like got fucking everything here. It's dope. You can go to in Williamsburg, like there's like a country bar where they have killing fucking bluegrass and country music. And then like next door is like the Radagast thing where like I have a buddy who plays like funk like for 4 hours every Saturday afternoon there.
Right.
Who like is also a killing trumpeter, but like plays funk guitar too, you know? And then like if you go down the street, you go to like National Sawdust where I saw like Antonio Sanchez play the Birdman score live, right? So like this is all within like a 10 block radius.
Right.
So New York is great. It's awesome. I met you guys here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good city.
Yeah.
Your band Porterfield, because it's kind of unique that in that like you have like a sax player, but then you also have like drums, and then you have like the moog bass thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you meet those guys in Porterfield? Because you guys are like a unit. It's
Yeah.
like 4 of you that you don't you don't really regularly sub out people.
Yeah. So
How did you guys meet?
It used to be a trio. For a long time, we've been together for 5 years, so for like 4 of those years, it was just drums, synth bass, and guitar. I met Raphael, who's the drummer, in a rhythmic ear training class at school. And we were both like pretty active students. And I remember him being like getting everything right, you know? When you like listening to like these hard things or like listening to things about like he's Brazilian, so we would listen to like some partita alto stuff and he could like find the one every time, where like as like some 20-year-old white dude who lived in Connecticut most of his life, like we hear that backwards, right?
Right.
So, you know, I remember and I asked a bunch of people when I was starting the band for recommendations of like someone that was like kind of a powerful, explosive drummer with like a lot of creativity, because that's what I wanted. I wanted like a Jeff Ballard type of thing going, but like for more of a rock context.
Right.
And his name kept popping up. So I hit him up and we were friendly with each other, but we never really hung out before the band started. And then my buddy JP, who is like has such a wonderful place in my heart, he and I were in an improv class together where like we played essentially free for like, you know, anywhere between 5 minutes and an hour and a half, you know, like one piece kind of a thing.
Right.
And we weren't allowed to bring anything other than like acoustic instruments. I mean, he was an electric bass player, so he would bring his electric bass, but like I brought my acoustic guitar and I sang, you know, in this class. Like the teacher like could grab like guitar chords on the piano, like his ears were so good, you know, like I would play a voicing and he would like play it back to me on the piano, like
Wow.
like legit, you know what I mean? And so we met in that class, and he kind of asked if he could bring in his Moog one day, and I was like, you know, like I'll remember that. And I had this idea from this Alabama Shakes record. The one with the black cover. What's that record called?
Color and Sound?
Sound and Color.
Sound and Color.
Yeah, which was a huge record for me sonically speaking, and I really loved like the synth bass sound that they had on that. So I knew that I wanted that, and I knew that I didn't want like some killing jazz keyboard player to play bass. I wanted like a bass player to play bass, but like on a synth.
Right.
And I don't know how much experience he had at the time, but like now he's playing it like he uses all of the filters and like the oscillators and stuff. Like he uses it as an instrument, not as like a keyboard instrument. You know, it's like very much is playing it the way, like with he plays it really using all of the parameters of the instrument the way that like a great upright bass player could use all of these different techniques. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And get different sounds out of their instrument. And then, funnily enough, Jared was one of my loyal customers at Pavement. And
at the
that was
Berklee.
our relationship for the longest time. Was like, I just served him black cold brews. You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
that's all he ordered. And like, and then like, you know, occasionally there would be like the hang on the Pavement stoop, and like he would be there and we would like chat and whatever. But like, we never really knew each other that well. And then Inez, my partner, and I went to an Antonio Sanchez Migration concert, and Jared was there, and we ended up chatting. You know, we like saw each other, and there was another mutual friend, and we got pizza afterwards, and like chatted and whatever, and exchanged information. And then like 2 weeks later, I had an NYU recording session that I wanted to use for the Porterfield record, and it was like, we were always like calling horn players for these gigs.
Right.
Like when we would tour or like play in other towns, we would like call a different horn player in each town, just to like for 2 or 3 songs, just to like have fun in that way, you know. And so we were used to like playing on the fly with different people, and Jared bought his pedals, and just like it was like a 9 a.m. recording session. He just fucking slayed it. And then like I asked him to play this gig at Shapeshifter Lounge, and he was playing on the whole set instead of just like 2 or 3 songs that like had a solo section.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like the perfect fit. So I before we released the album, while I was like making the album artwork, I like asked him like if he would want to be, you know, I spoke to the other guys first to make sure that it was cool. And, yeah. Now we play duo like Porterfield stuff, which is like super fun.
Yeah.
You know, like at Gold Sounds,
Yeah.
our last gig before the pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, dark. Dark.
February 2020.
Oh man. Was that recording Bed We Made?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. There's a music video for that.
Yeah,
And I
Nick's
get
in it.
strangled. Check that out.
It's great. Yeah. Link right there.
Featuring Inez on drums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Inez is playing drums.
Playing some slam
She's our number
brushes.
one sub. We actually were doing this thing because Raphael is one of these guys where he will learn a skill and then get really, really good at it, as if he's been doing it for like a decade, but he's been doing it for like maybe 10 months. And so he learned electric bass. So he would be, when JP couldn't make a gig, Rafa would go on bass and Inez would play drums.
That's so
Oh
sick.
man.
Which like happened a few times. It was like, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
We got like 2 minutes. Would you like to plug anything?
Sure, yeah. We just put out an album called Rome, which I'm very proud of. And yeah, I mean, it's on all of your streaming services. Porterfield, Porterfield. And we have 2 music videos. Bed We Made, which features this lovely young buck getting strangled in a bizarro context.
Amazing.
And we did this other music video for the song Always, which was written out of an exercise, a songwriting exercise. Both filmed by my buddy Evan Moore, awesome filmmaker, and choreographed by Bo Park, who is the choreographer on this tour that I'm doing right now.
Oh, cool.
And she's killing. Check her stuff out at the Broadway Dance Company, I think is what it's called. Broadway Dance Center. Yeah.
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 Well, thanks, Jacob, for joining us. Thanks for watching or listening.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Woo!
This was fun.
All right.
Yay.
Yeah, first.
Congratulations on your podcast, guys.